Welcome to the Fighting on Film podcast, the podcast all about classic and obscure war movies, from the Normandy landings to the days of chivalry and swords. If it's been captured on film, we're going to try and cover it. I'm Robbie of RM Military History.
I'm Matthew Moss of Historical Firearms and the Armourer's Bench.
Hello, welcome back to Fighting on Film. Now, this week, if you listened to last week's episode, we said that we had a bit of a FOF exclusive. Now, we were kindly sent a screener of Wolves of War by Signature Entertainment. Thank you very much. And it's a new war movie. It's out now on video on demand, and it will be out on DVD, I think, on the 19th. But as we say, it is a new British war movie. It's sort of in the vein of like those B movies of the 50s and 60s. It feels like a bit of a Commando book on film, I think. That's what I think I take away from it. So before we begin this episode, this is a spoiler review of Wolves of War before we go into production. So if you do want to watch it, just remember, spoilers. But Matt, do you want to start us off on the Wolves of War production?
Sure. So it was directed by Giles Alderson, who has done a number of British indie films. It was written by three chaps, Toby Kearton, who has directed himself the Dust Child, which was a short set in Vietnam during the Vietnam War.
Yeah, very good. I watched that this week. It's great.
I watched a couple of them as well, and they're quite interesting, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. We're talking to Toby at the moment, trying to get him on, because it's quite an interesting career there. For a young filmmaker, he's had quite a career already. So look out for that one when it happens.
Yeah, because he's also done The Little Picture, which is an interesting one where German and British deserters meet.
Yeah,
in a house, in a farmhouse, and there's an interesting psychological aspect to that. And then most recently, he's done a really interesting film called Hidden Wounds about PTSD, which came out this year, a short. He was credited on this for the story alongside Samuel Ellis, and the screenplay was put together by Ben Mole, who has done a whole glut of really interesting movies. He did the Behind the Lines Escape to Dunkirk movie, which is the one where the chap is made to box by the Germans. He did an interesting movie in 2020 about a Middle Eastern town which rebels against Portuguese invaders in the 1500s, which looks actually really interesting.
Yeah.
And he's done lots of documentary stuff, and he did he directed actually a film a little bit similar to this called We Go at Dawn, or We Go In at Dawn, a couple of years ago. It's a team going in to rescue a SOE sort of head. Cinematography was by Stuart Nicholas White, and there's some really good stuff in there, some nice ideas. He's done lots of shorts and indie cinema as well. And it was produced by Picture Perfect, who also produced, I think, a couple of Ben Mole's films as well. That rounds it out for production. There's not a lot more to say.
To be fair, once you've come off the Rebels of PT 218 and an Asylum film, a couple of weeks ago, I know we're going to...
Yeah.
Thing is, I think on the show, that's become the benchmark for bad movies.
I was thinking about this. Yeah, exactly. I was thinking about this. So it's unfair to compare this film to that, but...
It is. Yeah,
they're in a similar position as it's independent cinema made on a tight budget, telling a World War II story. So inevitably, we're going to compare them.
It is unfair to compare them though, because this is
absolutely. But I will say now that this film is much better than PT 218.
As I say, this is a well-made film. You know, it's not 100% perfect. I'm not going to say it's like, it's not up there with Where Eagles Dare, but it has its place.
Oh yeah, no, this is perfectly competent. So do you want to run us through cast?
Sure, we go cast and we'll talk about the plot a little bit. So the main cast of this one, it's Ed Westwick, who plays Jack Wallace, one of the commandos, and he's best known for his role as Chuck in Gossip Girl. He also appeared in the BBC sitcom White Gold about people selling, I think it's like they're selling double glazing. It's quite funny actually. I thought it was quite good. He also appeared in the 2007 film Son of Rambo, and more recently he was in another independent war film called Enemy Lines, which I think he played a Pole in it, or an American operative who could speak Polish.
I don't remember that. I haven't seen that
I
one.
watched
But
it. It
yeah.
was all right. It's
Hmm.
representation of partisans. I remember being quite good.
Oh, okay,
Anyway,
cool.
yeah, and then we have Matt Willis, Captain Norwood. He's the leader of the Commandos, and he's the former bassist or current bassist. I think they're still forming. They're still performing as McBusted, but he was in Busted. Do you remember from back in the
I
day?
do remember.
Yeah,
I vaguely remember that. Not one of my favorite bands.
Crash the Wedding, Year 3000.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
mainstays
3000.
of school discos, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely. If you're of a certain age, listeners, you'll remember Busted because they were everywhere for a bit, weren't they?
they were like McFly.
Yeah, they
I've
were.
seen McFly live.
Have you? Were they good?
They were all right. I took an ex-girlfriend that was a
Oh.
massive, massive fan.
Five Colours in Her Hair is a bit of a tune. I've got to admit.
I would know it if it was played. I don't remember it. I don't know. I wasn't a fan. I just went along for the ride.
Matt's trying to keep his street cred here.
Yeah, yeah. Once you've admitted you've been to a McFly gig, it's kind of a slippery slope. But moving on.
Yeah, so he was in Busted, and he also appeared in EastEnders for a little bit, I think in 2017, and he was
Oh,
also in
right.
the 2014 independent war film Allies. And then we have Sam Gittings as Deegan. He's the Irish sniper that accompanies the Commandos, and he was also in EastEnders. He was in Behind Enemy Lines, the Escape to Dunkirk film that you mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah, and he'll be appearing in the upcoming Masters of the Air miniseries when that comes out. Then we have Jackson Buse. He plays Professor Bob Connor. He's the American scientist that's attached to the Commandos.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's probably best known for being in the San Junipero episode of Black Mirror and the Catch-22 TV series in 2019.
Oh, was he? Oh, okay.
I like that series. It got a bit of a short shrift when it came out, but I quite
Yeah, it
liked
kind of
it.
just got passed over, didn't it? Weirdly.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Good production values. Anyway, then we have Rupert Graves as Professor Hopper. He's been in loads of British TV series, probably better known for being Lestrade in Sherlock recently. He was in the War of the Worlds BBC series. I remember he was in one episode of Ashes to Ashes that I remember.
That
and he was
BBC
also,
adaptation of War of the Worlds was a bit of a letdown, I've got to say.
It was a bit. It went up. It focused too much on Mars, and I was like, "What are you doing?" Like, it wasn't good. The trailers made that look fantastic, and then the series was a bit bland. It's a shame. But he was also in the 1987 miniseries Fortune of War alongside Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson.
Ah.
Yeah, and he will be appearing in an upcoming biopic of Mary Seacole, which I thought
that sounds interesting.
Might be quite good. I couldn't find anything much about it online, but it looks good. It has Sam Worthington in it. I hadn't heard that name for a while.
Okay.
Blimey, do you remember when he was going to be huge and then it didn't happen? Then we have Anastasia Martin as Hannah. She's Professor Hopper's daughter in it. She was in From the Cold, a Netflix spy series that's come out earlier this year. That's her biggest credit at the moment.
I haven't caught that.
No, I haven't
either. Quite good in there, actually. I thought she was okay.
It looked okay. Then we have Ava Magyar as Elsa. She's the SOE informant that they go and sort of seek refuge with. She's a Hungarian actress. She's appeared in the 2018 horror war hybrid Overlord and X-Men First Class.
I don't mind Overlord. What do you think of it?
It was all right.
Yeah.
I thought it was okay. Like it's quite a good war movie in its own right, and then it goes into horror. And then I think when it goes into horror, it loses something a little bit. It goes a bit generic once it comes out.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's kind of a very generic ending.
Yeah, going off topic now, but it starts really promising and then it sort of tails away. I know, right? And then to round out the cast, we have Max Themak, and he plays Von Sachs, the big bad, the main antagonist of the picture. Yeah, the big bad Nazi. Yeah. He's not really a Nazi in it. He is, but he's not, if you know what I mean. It will come apparent later.
He's a Nazi. Explain that in a minute when we talk about plot.
Yeah, we will. He's still a Nazi. Let's not get that wrong. The character, not the actor. Let's clear that up as well. So yeah, Max Themak's a German actor, and he will also be in Masters of the Air coming up.
Oh, okay, cool.
And he's been in lots of German TV series as well. So there's your cast. And I thought, to be fair, the cast is quite strong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Considering you sometimes get these straight to VOD, these straight to DVD films, and sometimes it's, as with, I'm going to go back to it again, as with Rebels of PT 218, the cast aren't much copying that. They're too old. They look like they're not really caring. They're there for a paycheck. But these guys, I mean, they might be in their mid-30s, but they pass for Commandos quite well, I think.
There's a high level of effort that's gone in from
Yeah.
the cast,
Mm.
and that definitely helps the film.
It doesn't just feel like they're there for a paycheck. It feels like they're putting their all into it. But the plot, so I've got it down as a small commando team are sent behind enemy lines in 1945, just before the end of the war, to extract an American scientist who is being held hostage by German forces.
So they basically go in to rescue Rupert Graves, who's an American scientist, who for some reason has been in Nazi Germany for the entire war. He just didn't come home before the war began, apparently. He's an expert in nuclear fission or fusion fission, I think, explosions, and he's a nuclear physicist, etc. Developing a nuclear bomb. Classic war movie trope thing where they have to save a scientist. The little twist on it that I liked was that they have to prevent his falling into the hands of the Russians.
Yeah.
Because the film's set in 1945 at the very end of the war in Europe. So there's a nice little element where they've put a little twist on it and had
like
a German team.
Of the essence. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, a German team's going to try and snatch him, and they find the German team dead because there are some.
You mean the Soviet team?
Sorry, the Soviet team. Yeah, the Russian team. Because they've been killed by German partisans, who are the werewolves.
The werewolves, yeah, that was really cool because they bring that in quite early. So they're like the big main protagonists.
See the symbol, don't they? And they're like, what does this symbol mean?
What's this symbol mean? Yeah, and you wouldn't necessarily know if you were just a random commando team. And then that becomes a bit of a plot point. I'm thinking, okay, how are the werewolves, how are they going to create an atomic bomb? But, in the sort of commando book-esque of it all, it doesn't feel wrong.
Why are they holding him? Do they know that he's important?
Maybe I thought they might have leveraged him or something.
Perhaps so.
Perhaps so. Maybe bought their way out of Germany or something with him, or I don't know, got a load of Reichsmarks for him. I don't know. The plot is it's enough, isn't it? It's not.
It is. Yeah, you're right there. At the end, it gets a little bit muddled, but I'll talk about that later on.
I'll get to that at the end as well. So I think
in general, it's a fairly straightforward plot, isn't it?
It is. It's very works. A to B to C. There's a definite beginning, middle, end. There's, as we're saying, the end might tail off a bit. We'll talk about that. As I said at the start, it's not the worst, it's not the best, but it's somewhere in the middle, and that's a good thing. Anyway, I think we should maybe talk about some of the kit, because don't we love a bit of alley-tally?
It's time for Alley Tally on Fighting on Film.
So,
Matt, anything you like to pick out?
Well, I quite like that the whole team are armed with STEM Mark II S's. So they're all carrying suppressed Stens. That's kind of cool. They're all airsoft guns used as props, and that's fine.
Yeah. Get that good
the
movie silent sound.
Yeah, the movie silencer sound effects.
Yeah.
And the lads are giving it a little bit of fake recoil, but not quite on the same level as the deck gunners of PT-18.
No, this is much better fake recoil. And I think that's really unfair to make actors do, all the time.
Yes, it is. Massively unfair.
And I understand, it's hard to get, you might be able to get a gas blowback version of the gun you're using, or is it a safety thing? I sometimes think, it might be easier just to have these airsoft guns on sets. You don't have to bring in a firearms officer. You don't have to do any additional firearms training. You can just, try and get the guys to do a shaky gun as best they can. But I always think it's a bit unfair on the actors, because some people are better at it than others, and it's just a bit unfair.
Well, I mean, 3 commandos that survived the drop are all fairly good at faking that recoil, so it looks okay.
Yeah.
One thing that did kind of bug me is whenever they were going to go and do something that's sneaky, they'd put down their suppressed Stens and take out 1911s.
Oh yeah.
So the loudest possible choice you could make out of what they're carrying.
It looks more covert though, doesn't it?
It does. It's easy for sneaking, good for sneaking, but just get a well rod.
That's what, but
Lock
that's
a
then
well rod
suppressed
up.
then. That's what it's for,
Yeah,
And in the
exactly.
world of suppressed weapons in the 40s, like the suppressed Sten is up there as being one of the quietest.
Yeah,
It's between that and the
absolute
suppressed
best,
grease gun. Yeah,
yeah, the Delisle and the well rod. All.
yeah, of course.
I mean, it would have been nice to see a Delisle.
It would have been nice.
I'm not surprised it wasn't in there, but they're all in own clothes. It's Mufti Day at Commando Command, and so they're not in.
Day.
They're not dressed in BD or.
No, they're not in full battle dress. No,
they should have been introduced as SOE more so, I think,
yeah,
than using the commando term, because then they're behind enemy lines. They're wearing clothes to blend in with the locals. That's all fine.
I thought it was meant to be like a deniable op. That's why they weren't wearing all the kit.
I think so. And there's a couple of lines that fluff that a little bit, and it doesn't quite work. And the sniper, the Irish sniper that's along, has a K98K, which is scoped.
Deniable K98K. That's what I thought it was.
Which is fine. If they'd been in uniform, then he should have had a number 4T, but they aren't in uniform. So having him carry a K98K, perfectly acceptable. Looks pretty good. The one thing I did not like was how at one point it was making silenced sounds.
It did once or twice. Yeah, it was like silence when it needed to be, and then at the end battle it was just not silenced at all.
Where there was, and it didn't have a silencer on.
I'm glad you noticed that as well, because I wasn't going to bring it up if not. I thought I dreamt it.
No, definitely. But yeah, some decent kit for a budget film. I thought it was quite good. The Germans, there's an STG-44 in there as well, isn't there?
Quite a few of them. Yeah, it was nice.
MP40s and such.
Finally, we get a film that actually shows late war German weapons in the year they should be used in. It's not like randomly turning up in like 1942 or something like that.
Yeah,
it's quite nice. Germans have decent uniforms. I'm not a big German uniform expert, but it didn't seem too bad.
They're kind of what you would expect.
Yeah, like the Feldgrau,
Volkssturm and partisans to possibly be wearing, I suppose.
And there's lads in like civilian heart mishmash, civilian Wehrmacht stuff with the Wolverine, not Wolverine, the werewolf armband on.
Different film.
Yeah. And then they've got some nice German motorbikes and sidecars. I think there's an Opel Blitz in there at one point. I think that was supplied by Bruce Compton's collection, the guy that does combat dealers, because I think it's his wife or his daughter's listed in the credits.
Right.
Underneath, I can't remember the exact thing, like vehicle supplier or something. So I think that's probably what it's from. And they have a Dakota for the parachute drop. That was quite nice.
They do, yeah, that was nice. Yeah. And it's later a bomber.
It fills in for a bomber, whatever. I mean, I wasn't expecting to get like a Whitley or something, or a Lank or something. But there is a Lank at the end, though. When it fades out at the end and it's assumed.
Oh yeah.
Implied they get picked up by a plane. That's an outline of a Lank.
Yeah, how the Lank manages to do that, I don't know, but yes.
The best goddamn RAF crew in the entire Air Force, Matt. That's what they are. But yeah, I get what they were going for. And
some decent little accoutrements, and I thought the mise en scène throughout the film was pretty good. So there was some nice attention to detail in the set dressing and the way it was shot and framed. I thought that was all pretty good.
There was no massive immersion breaks either.
No, that's what I was thinking. And unlike we're going to do it again, PT218.
Drink every time you hear us mention that film, listeners, from now on.
Where Eric Roberts draws a Taurus PT-24-7 or whatever it was.
We didn't have that.
German with his AR-15.
We had some good Webley or Enfield revolver. Action. And it gets name checked, actually, I think.
It does. The Irish chap says to him, you got a new one or something like that. A new
Enfield or something. Yeah. I was like, Matt will like that line.
You don't see Enfields and Webleys in films very often. Pretty a nice surprise. Some decent webbing in places, and some I think you said there was some 37 patterns.
Yeah, Westwick's got like a 37 pistol rig on. And I think there's a US shoulder holster that Willis is wearing, but it's all allied kit. It's all it all works for what they're doing. I was like, you know what? They're covert. They're behind enemy lines. I just see it, as I say, it's like a filmed Commando book. Anything goes. It's fine. They looked allied enough.
They looked the part.
They looked the
They
part.
didn't
That's
look,
the word. Yeah,
They weren't wearing modern low-bearing vests.
they didn't have like
So,
58
thank
pattern
God for
webbing
that.
or
Yeah.
Alice plate chest rigs or whatever. But then the one thing I really did like, we're talking about the Ali Tally and the kit, but I like the inclusion of the werewolves, the wolf angels guys, because it's grounded in history. So towards the end of the war, the German hierarchy created this werewolf movement, which was like when the Allies eventually do come through, you start a guerrilla war behind the lines. And there's a bit of a grey area whether they were actually, combat effective or anything, or whether they actually inflicted any
whether they
casualties
did
at
anything.
all.
They were supposed to be like a stay behind sort of unit that was going to activate and do that kind of thing. And yeah, it's not a subject I know a great deal about, but I thought it was interesting that it was incorporated as a plot
it was
device.
good. And they've got their proper like Wolf's Angle divisional marking thing on their armbands. So it's nice. It's nice they've used something that's genuinely based in it. Because it adds something to the movie. You can see werewolves harassing it. Sort of maybe it's something that could be used more. I know I've definitely read a Commando book where a team of lads are in Berlin or something and they are rounding up guys. That's quite good actually. Anyway, we should move on to favourite scenes. Talk about some things we liked.
Hello, I'm Matt Bone, host of the new aviation podcast, The Damcasters. In this podcast, we'll be journeying through the history of flight, from when Pontius was a pilot to today and beyond. We're even going to be delving into the fine art of crafting wooden propellers and the uncertain future of aviation itself. The Damcasters is available now to listen to wherever you get your podcasts, or you can check us out at damcasterspod.com. We do hope you'll be able to join us.
My favourite scene was the bit where there's a Mexican standoff over a box full of people.
Yeah.
So they infiltrate the werewolves' base, and the idea is, well, we're going to take in these big boxes full of Riesling wine. That'll get the garrison pissed.
Oh, is it wine? I thought it was.
Yeah. There's a whole bit where
I thought it was Riesling chocolate bars. Like the caramel chocolate, but you get from Germany. I thought it was that.
My God, how much chocolate were they taking in? All that. That's like 3 crates, giant crates worth. I mean, that's a lot of wine, actually, to be fair. But yeah.
Yeah,
anyway.
that's chocolate. Come right through, Mr. Allied Commando.
So they get in, they find Graves. They're a bit angry that his daughter's with them, because their plan to get them out was put them in a crate and carry them out, which is fine.
Classic.
So Rupert Graves is there doing his cracking American accent.
It's really comes out of nowhere, but it's really good because I had forgotten that his character was American by the time they got to him.
Yeah.
So then when Graves like, "Oh, hi guys, thanks for capturing me," you're like, Rupert.
Wow. Okay.
It wasn't that bad.
So Graves' accent's better than that, but
that was Jimmy Stewart.
They argue that his daughter has to come with them because you can't leave it behind.
Unfair if they did, yeah.
They grab all his papers. For some reason, he's been doing some calculations on a tiny blackboard on the wall.
Wipe that off.
If I was being held prisoner, I probably would hold off on doing work. I'd be just too worried about things. But anyway, Rupert Graves has been cracking on. Fair play to him. And they have an argument. Get him in the box. They both get in the box, carry them out, and then of course the Germans stop them, and it's the head German. And they have a little discussion, and he asks like, why are you struggling to hold this box so much, to Matt Willis, because Matt Willis is sweating.
It's carrying like 2 people. It's like you can you see the strain. It's good. I like it. Yeah.
So they put the box down. The Germans like, what's going on? This is not normal. And then there's a whole part with which I quite like, actually. I'll talk about this now because there's the female character that Rob mentioned at the beginning is a Hungarian Elsa, whose husband was an SOE contact, but he died, and she's been carrying on for him apparently. Portrayed as a capable woman, has the idea for wine crates probably. And earlier in the film, the guys encounter a patrol of the werewolves, and they kill them all. And one of the werewolves, it turns out, is Elsa's son, who has been brainwashed by German propaganda since being a little boy, and he's joined the werewolves to keep the fight going. And she has some nice dialogue there where she talks about trauma and it's all they know and that kind of thing. And
it's quite nuanced, actually. I was kind.
It is
like,
actually. It's
good.
surprisingly good, isn't it? Yeah. Fast forward back to this Mexican standoff where they're all stood around this crate full of Rupert Graves and his daughter. The German officer realizes who she is and says, "Did you know that did you know that the Allied commandos killed your son?" And she's shocked, and he thinks that's the point where she's going to dob them in.
It's heavily implied,
so
isn't it? They keep you on tenterhooks for that one.
Yeah, and then it's even that scene's a little bit nuanced because she turns to Matt Willis and says, "Get ready," and then turns around and fires the gun that the Germans handed her at him, and it's empty.
PPK.
Classic trope.
Yeah,
PPK.
See, I like the tropes in this. They're almost played off, looking at the audience like, this one.
Yeah, they're almost knowing at points, aren't they?
Yeah.
And at that point, all hell breaks loose, and there's a full-on Mexican standoff and a little bit of a gunfight, and Rupert Graves has to get out of the box, and they run for a truck, and then there's a very long, break contact drill that goes on where they're running around hiding behind tables, and then
you get the classic,
the thinnest wooden bulletproof tables you've ever seen.
Matt Willis has his classic get behind that table and he kicks it over like in Call of Duty or Banner Brothers or Call of Duty, whenever they kick a table over and then use it as cover, and it's like a titanium table or something. It's fantastic. I liked it.
Yeah,
for me,
level 3 rated table.
That's one of the strongest parts of the film. That feels like, we'll talk about it later, but that bit feels like it should be the end. that should be the middle section, because it's a really strong sequence.
It's well shot too. There's some good shots in there, and it flows well. It's dynamic and it works quite well.
I think someone refers to the MG34 in the emplacement as knackered once it gets hit with a couple of rounds. That's such a British soldier thing to say. Machine gun's knackered. It sounds like something out of Call of Duty.
Doesn't it get shot? Do they not shoot it or something?
I think they do accidentally shoot it. And it's just knackered. It's great.
Almost as good as the MG34 usage in the Steel Bayonet, where they knock out that MG34, and then the lieutenant takes the magazine, the belt carrier off and throws it in a nice. Forgot to mention that last week. So there's a bonus.
Hopefully you're up on your episodes, people. That'll mean nothing to you.
Last week we did 1957's The Steel Bayonet, and I forgot to mention that bit, which I actually liked.
You can listen to the entirety of the back catalogue of Fighting on Film on fightingonfilm.com.
You might have a foff binge.
Jokes,
anyway, back to the film we're talking about. But that whole scene then leads into a what I think is a really nice little tribute to Dirty Dozen 2, where they are on that Opel Blitz being chased by a motorcycle and sidecar with an MG42 or 34 on it. And they're all taking pot shots at it with their airsoft guns. Their guns.
You're a bad man. That's not fair.
No, sorry. Eventually, Rupert Graves takes over, manages to shoot the motorcyclist, but sadly, Rupert takes around. That little mid-section is really quite strong, and I enjoyed that bit. What about you? What was your favourite part?
I really like Matt Willis in this. He plays this no-nonsense captain really well. He gets the gruffness, like the grizzledness of it.
Get that man a packet of Strepsils.
Yeah, he's giving it the really gruff voice. He's always pulling up Westwick for being a bit of a dreamer, a bit of a family man. He's always like, "You listen to my orders." It's proper like gruff. But you get some really sort of good actiony bits. So there's at the start of the movie, they drop in and they get contact pretty much immediately. And there's a really good choreographed fight between Willis and this big bulky werewolf guy. And they have a bit of a hand-to-hand, and there's a knife through the hand that you get. I'm sure John Wick's made that fashionable to people to stop knives with their hands.
I wasn't expecting that.
I wasn't. It was good.
Do a bit, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of gritted teeth in that moment. It's quite funny. And then a wounded soldier after this fight, wounded soldier goes for a pistol to shoot Willis's character, and he puts his like boot on the guy's hand, and the dying Germans being like, "Oh, there are hundreds, thousands of us. You'll never win," all that sort of stuff. And Ed Westwick's like, "I'll just leave him to die. Like he's already wounded. Like don't worry, leave him be." And then the guy's like, "Germany victorious" or whatever, giving it the whole spiel. And Willis says to him, "I'm sorry, I don't understand. You shot our interpreter." And then he just shoots him in the face. It's such a cold line. It's like out of John Wick, as it is. It's really like actiony, proper 80s, 90s action film-esque, but in a really self-indulgent way. And I really like that sequence. It's just cool, you know. Like it's not what I was expecting.
Yeah, that was a good line.
It was a good line. It really was. Oh, and I like the Sherlock reference that Willis gets to say as well when they're.
Yeah,
because we weren't sure whether it was an SOE reference or a Sherlock reference, but when they're when they've escaped from the big bads in the middle, when they found Rupert's character, Willis goes, "We need to let's radio Baker Street and tell them we found the professor."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Ha the Sherlock reference," and, you know. But then you thought it might have been a reference to the SOE being based in Baker Street.
Yeah,
it works either way.
Both work, and maybe that's what they were thinking. I thought that's really clever. If so,
it's good. No, but I like the Willis's character. Then he gets this big heroic death at the end, and it's a bit tropey. It's a bit like, you know, taking shots, trying to crawl to a bag for the green smoke. But giving it his all, I quite enjoyed it. He really reminds me of a turn of the millennium Sean Pertwee. You know, when Sean Pertwee was trying to be an action star for a bit, like it's sort of Sean Pertwee in Dog Soldiers a bit.
Yeah. If they rebooted it, let Matt Willis have a part.
Let Willis have a crack at that. That'd be great. But yeah, that was my favourite part. So, final thoughts.
Hello, I'm Al Murray, and you're listening to Fighting on Film, the world's #1 war film podcast.
It's a strong little film for what it is. It's tropey, but in a not too ostentatious way.
You can enjoy it. You can enjoy the tropes.
Yeah, there's little nods. It's not over. I suppose you could say it's not cliched. It's tropey in that it has some of those bits where it pretends the character's been killed, and then there's a reveal that he's not, and he's alive at the end of the film.
Yeah.
You got the crawl into the
Bergen with the gas grenade.
With the smoke grenade in there.
Yeah.
There's a bit where the sniper shoots a Panzerschreck
through the barrel
round. Yeah. Before he fires, and that blows up the guy with the Panzerschreck.
I was sitting at my computer desk with a cup of tea and biscuits, be like, "Yay! They did it! They did that!" It's like, come on. It was really
got
good.
the bit where the Nazi gets killed by falling bombs, and
that was good.
Watches the bombs fall and then screams 9.
He's like 9.
Yeah, because his men won't let him into the bunker. You see. That's how you know he's a real shit. Yeah. Well, I think they reached for some really interesting little nuances, as I mentioned earlier. The ambiguity of the mother still helping the Allies, although they've killed her brainwashed son. It gets a little bit muddled towards the end, because after they rescue Graves and he dies in the escape, his daughter reveals that she actually knows about the same amount as he did about crafting a nuclear bomb, etc.
She's been reading his notes, it's implied, isn't it?
Yeah, and helping him with his research and stuff. And she says, well, the Germans have made a prototype. And Matt Willis is like, what? And he kind of like accepts that this is true, which seems highly improbable. And
it's late in the war.
They have to infiltrate the base that Rupert was previously working at.
It gets a bit muddled, doesn't it?
It does. It's empty. Is it the same base that they went to before, and the Russians were found there?
Yeah, I think it's. Yeah,
I think it must be,
isn't
mustn't it?
Yeah, it has to be.
But they go back again. and it turns out that they actually went there to pick up her kids.
Yeah, and that comes out of nowhere. You're like,
yeah, it
hang
does.
on.
Like, why didn't they find the kids when they were looking for them initially? I don't know.
See that, because that's all just to tie into Ed Westwick's characterization of him missing his daughter. And
yeah, actually, you know, I quite liked every time he kills someone, he looks down and it's his daughter.
Yeah. That was like it reminded me of those road safety adverts where the guy looks down at the kid that he's run over. It reminded me of that. I was like, I don't know why, it just did. You know,
I know the one you mean. But they didn't overdo that. It wasn't like every German he killed.
It wasn't like
it was just a couple smattered in.
Yeah,
and I thought, that's quite an interesting storytelling device.
Okay, and then he goes into this whole speech of like, my daughter won't recognize who I've become, and that gets a little bit cliche.
Do you not get leave, Ed? Have you not been home on leave at all?
He's been the whole war,
especially considering you're a commando based at home. It's not like you've been away in the Aegean or something.
He was a method commander. He wouldn't leave the base.
Oh, sorry, no, he was in North Africa, wasn't he? And he destroyed 20 German tanks single-handed.
That's it. Yeah. 200.
It's a really, oh Christ, it was 200, wasn't it?
With a bomb. And that's like, what?
Yeah, there was a really clunky bit of exposition on the plane at the very beginning where they're like, he's a war hero, you know. And he's like, oh yeah, what did you do, war hero? And he said, well, he destroyed 200 enemy tanks in the desert. And the Irish chap's like, how'd you do it? How did you do it? And he's like, with a bomb. And I'm like, and what kind of bomb, Ed? I think we all. I speak for everyone when I say, what kind of bomb was it? How did you do this?
It's fine. It was okay.
If he'd said with bombs or calling it artillery, okay.
It'd have been even funnier if he'd gone. It wasn't 200. It was more like 20. You know, something like that.
That would have been great. That would have been good.
That'd have been good.
That little bit of exposition there was a bit duff.
It was a bit duff, yeah, but it was all right.
But that's probably the worst offense in the whole film. Like, doesn't have any other lines that just don't make sense, either
Not
like
really.
Contextually or militarily. If you compare it to PT 218 again,
drink everyone.
It's like. I mean, at least they didn't have a French map showing where they were
walking. Yeah,
fuck.
You know, the locations they've chose pass off for Germany in 45.
Oh yeah, it looks
quite
fine.
well.
It's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
The thing that got me was that I think they've
maybe not the British church that they go into.
No, anyway, yeah. So talking about muddled ends, I think they let their interesting part of the plot go too early with this Soviet snatch squad that are coming.
Yes, yeah.
So I've got two things I think that the movie could have done to make that ending less muddled. You could still have the kids in it. You didn't have to write them out. They could have still been in there. They should have gone back to the factory, and instead of having this Soviet team killed early, they've already mentioned them at in the sort of first 20 minutes and odd when they come in.
Yeah, found one body perhaps.
Yeah, then they come in. Then the Soviets are trying to take them out, and they're trying to take the Germans out at the same time. So it becomes this. Who's going to come out on top? Is it going to be the Soviets, the Germans, or the British? And you could have had a three-way thing, or you ignore the Soviets again, and you say, right, we can't get a plane in because how the hell are we going to land a plane in enemy territory? We'll make our way back to Allied lines, or they bump into an Allied line or something. It would have been good.
Yeah,
like I think that's maybe how you could have ended it, and you still could have had your big set-piece battle because you could have had. Like a tank come in at the end and take on the werewolf.
So they're supposed to pop the smoke to prevent the bombing and also to call in an evacuation.
Yeah, it's a bit much.
Or an airlift. And you're like, oh, well, are they going to send a separate plane or is it the bombers going to pick them up? And
it was all a bit muddled. It was all a bit much at the end. I think you either save your chase sequence and your decent firefight for the end. Where they could have got back to the lines or whatever, or because I think that middle chase sequence is the strongest set piece, and it sort of devolves into one side pop up and have a few shots, the other side pop up and have a few shots. It becomes a little bit generic firefight.
Yeah, and you get that the trope of the Matt Willis's character, the hero, being killed, and you also get that a little bit earlier as well with the sniper. He's killed as well. saving the child, and it's kind of like it's a little bit long, but it's not long, so it just feels like it's drawn out.
Yeah, because the movie overall doesn't feel too long, but that end sequence is a bit dragged.
Fairly well paced.
It does drag a bit because you think I've seen all this before. That's the only thing.
Yeah, but I will say that that end shootout kind of redeems itself. With the Panzerschreck.
That was nice. And,
which blows up like a shipping crate that they're using as cover.
I love that trope of cover doing too much. I love that in film.
Yeah. I mean, everything they're hiding behind is concealment, not cover. But yes,
yeah. I want someone to make a movie where cover doesn't help. He's hiding behind wood. Shoot the wood like around him, like that sort of thing. I'd love someone to make a movie like that. You know, like how in Last Action Hero, where when Charles Dance goes into the real world and he shoots his gun in New York City, no one comes and finds him and arrests him. But if he does it in the cartoon world, he gets jumped on in like 10 seconds. I want someone to do that, but with a war film, but with cover and like reloading and things like that. It'd be great. Anyway, my ramble there.
What I was going to say was that there's perhaps the only time I've ever seen this done in a film. It's a POV shot down iron sights.
Yeah, that was cool.
And you get some POV shots with the sniper's scope, which is cool.
We love a POV.
Standard. Oh yeah,
scope shot.
Perfectly great. But then you get from, I think it's the antagonist, the bad German chap, Nazi
Von Sachs.
Thank you. I was really reaching there. And he has a K98K, and he looks down the sights, and it's the film superimposes the sights on.
It's cool.
And it looks all right, actually. It doesn't look wrong. It doesn't look janky. And I was just like, oh wow, okay, I've never seen that before.
We've definitely seen it done worse in other movies.
And that's the shot that you get when he's aiming at Willis as he's crawling for the smoke, isn't it? And it works. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah. So I think all in all, like as I said at the start, I see this as like a, if you got Wolves of War, the Commando book, this is like that. It's like a Boy's Own Victor annual. It doesn't try and recreate a huge battle with no budget. It doesn't try and recreate a whole campaign with no budget and just do a bad job.
Just men on a mission, isn't it?
Just men on a mission
Classic.
film. Yeah. And it's for a video on demand film that you can just enjoy with a couple of beers and some snacks. It's quite enjoyable. And we hope that you go and watch it because, as well, again, as we sometimes say on the show, we don't say it enough, but we need to support the British film industry.
As you alluded to earlier, they're in that fine tradition of B movies, and it's not always a bad thing. B movies aren't always that.
No, they're not
a bad thing.
No, exactly. Me and Matt were saying off air, like we think these movies get a bit of short shrift because people think, straight to DVD. Look at it, it's got
VOD.
Yeah. But VOD and straight to DVD is like the drive-in of today. You pay a couple of quid, you see like, Paratroop Command or whatever. Everyone goes home happy. That was Wolves of War. And as I said at the start of the episode, it's on video on demand now. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, you'll be able to get it on DVD as well. So check your local stores for that one. Thanks again to Signature Entertainment for sending us a screener. And we'll be back next week with another war film for your enjoyment. Follow us on the socials. Check out fightingonfilm.com for all of the back episodes of the show. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.